Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Daniel, and today we'll be covering a game that happened pretty much exactly a year ago, a couple of days off of a year ago. It was the 2021 July Open. My online rating at the time was 1396, and this is my round 1 game. So I'm playing black, and let's take a look at what happened in the game. So here in this position, I just played the move rook to d8. Don't worry, I've calculated what happens after bishop takes a7. After bishop takes a7, I calculated that b5 would be my next move, attacking the bishop and also attacking the pin pawn on c4, so I would be able to win back this pawn on c4. So that's the first detail. So after rook to d8, obviously the main objective is to claim the open file, the only open file on the board, and potentially in the future I can maybe land my rook on this d4 square at some point if this bishop on c5 isn't around, so that I can attack the c4 pawn. So my opponent here, he played the move a4. a4 in fact is actually a mistake because it actually allows the plan that I had just set. So here in this position, after a little bit of thought, because this is the position where I spent the most amount of time thinking, as I wasn't sure what to do, but here I realized that I should just follow through with my plan of playing trying to get to the c4 point. So I play the move b6. So the move b6, it kicks away this bishop. So either the bishop can retreat back to e3, or it can go on to like b4 or a3. So going to b4 or even to a3 isn't too good, because obviously after this I can simply play c5 and your bishop is locked away forever, and I can play rook d4 after. So my opponent, he retreats back to e3. And here I play the move knight to g4, trying to kick away this bishop again from this diagonal. And also knight for bishop would be beneficial for me, considering the fact that he would have to take back with the f pawn, and that would double his pawns. So here he plays bishop to g5, attacking my rook, and here I drop my rook into the nice square on d4. So now I'm putting even more pressure on the c4 pawn, and in fact it's indefensible. Here my opponent plays h3, and then here I play h6. So after the move h3, I considered dropping my knight back to f6, but I didn't really like this because my knight on f6 was my knight on g4 was already in a pretty aggressive post, and after knight to f6, I felt that I was sort of just retreating and it was a bit passive, and also my opponent can go back bishop to e3. Although I can take the pawn right here, I still didn't really like this because I felt that my position, it was a bit tangled, and I didn't really like this too much. So instead, here after h3, I played the move h6, counter-attacking my opponent's bishop, which is on the g5 square. So here my opponent drops the bishop all the way back to c1, and here I drop my knight back to f6, which was under fire, and here after queen to c2, I take the pawn with the bishop, and then here simply b3, my opponent, bishop to a6, dropping my bishop back, still eyeing up this e2 pawn, potential putting some pressure here. Knight into b5, taking advantage of this pin right here, of the c6 pawn, and now he's actually forking my rook and my queen. Here I take the knight. Here simply I drop back. And here I actually play this really nice move a5. So a5, I take advantage of the fact that this pawn can actually en passant take, because then I would take the bishop on c6, and now I would be completely winning. So a5, so now this rook has no entry points into my position. At most it can go to a4, and this structure in general is just really solid against his dark square bishop as well. And also his bishop's now locked in after the move e4, as you saw earlier. Here queen to c6, lining up some pressure on this e5 point. And here I was starting to reroute my knight. So I was going to reroute my knight to this square on e6, so I play knight h7, then knight f8, and then knight into e6, so I can get to this d4 square. King to g2, I continue with my plan. Here I slap my queen over to d2, so that if I play knight to e6, if he decides to take, then I don't have to take back with the f pawn. Queen to f3, lining up some pressure on the f7 point. Knight into e6, blocking the bishop's line of sight onto the f7 pawn. Rook to d1, lining up some maybe discoveries in the future. I play king to h7 just to avoid anything where if I drop my knight into, if I move my knight, then maybe there's bishop takes f7 in some cases. So I just want to move my king away just to prevent any possible threats towards my king. King to h7, h4, play h5 to prevent any counterplay on the king side. Rook to d3, And here I simply just snag this pawn here on b5. Bishop drops back to attack, and here I just take because if he takes my queen, then I can take their queen, and this would actually in fact be winning for me, as I would actually be in fact up 2 pawns. I have a 3-on-1 on the queen side. Here my opponent decides to go for some tricks. He plays queen takes f2, thinking that, okay, I'm still currently attacking the rook, and if my opponent drops back, then I can maybe even take this knight at some point. So for example, queen to c6, let's say, then there's simply bishop takes d3, and now he's actually kind of getting in on the king side, and I didn't really like this. However, I do have one move here that completely nullifies any counterplay he has, which is the move queen to d7, which I played in the game, because now I'm actually threatening to trade queens, and you don't have enough time to take this rook, because if you take the rook, then I simply take the queen, and this will be an easy win. So in this position, my opponent takes the knight, but in fact, in this case, I would actually be up at exchange. And here, rook to d2 attacking the bishop, and then he tries to get behind my pawns to maybe get some counterplay with this b pawn. But however, I simply protect all of counterplay by playing the move b5, and soon I will play a4 or even c4 depending on the situation, and I would promote a pass pawn. So in this position, as you saw by the symbol, my opponent has resigned the game. So, pretty smooth game in general. Really nice idea that I found with the move b6 earlier to kick away the bishop off of that diagonal, so I can open up my rook to the nice d4 square. And that idea with b6 happened right here. After a4, I played b6 to kick this bishop off of this diagonal. So that was very nice, really nice positional things. Also noticing that I guess knight f6 would be a bit passive, so I also had the counterattack idea with h6, and also finally finding the queen d7 idea to trade queens and go up the exchange at the minimum. In general, a pretty smooth game. This actually happened a year ago. The video I'll publish before this is actually from the same tournament that's happening this year, and it's funny how my rating last year in the same tournament was only on the cusp of 1400, and now I'm on the cusp of 2000. So yeah, pretty good hard work from me. I can see it's paying off after a year, and yeah, hope you all enjoyed, and thanks for watching.